We're not in an era of shut up and do. We are an era of self-elevation, and people are becoming more aware of self-worth, how they do and don't want to be treated. Management is becoming We're moving into a new age of leadership because there's an awakening of a different type of leadership, and it's very much managers having an awareness of how people work and supporting them to get the best out of them rather than just shut up and do.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Indra, and I'd like to welcome you to the Messy Middle Matters, where my friends and I explore all the twists, turns, and challenges that arise in the messy middle of work. So today we're talking about a topic we've covered before, but we're going to go much deeper this time. It's the human side of stepping into leadership. We talked a little bit about are you ready for stepping um, into being a people manager? Because it's so different than being in an individual contributor role. And so I am just so beyond delighted to have Laura with me today, Laura Lillie Goodridge with me today, talking about this topic because it's something that you've delved in on so deeply and you help people through this transition in such an elegant way. Why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for the intro. I'm thrilled to be here as well. I know we've had a geek out about this topic off screen,
Totally.
so I'm ready to rock and roll now. So yeah, I'm Laura Lillie Goodridge. I'm the founder of Laura Lillie Coaching. I focus on mid-level to senior level managers, really supporting them through the transition into leadership. I do also partner with CEOs, focusing on raising self-awareness, but also providing fundamental skills that they need to learn as leaders. Heavily weighted using a modality called human design, focusing on knowing thyself, as it were, in order to support people around us and ultimately elevate everybody on your team to company business performance success.
100%. And, you know, it's the year end. We're going to be releasing this episode actually just next week because I'm just so excited because year end is where there are so many transitions happening. It can be in a lot of organizations the time of year where people do get promotions, where there's year end bonuses, or at the very least, it's setting up goals for the upcoming year. So even if somebody wants to be on that path for people management because they feel like that's the right next step for them, I think it's just like a perfectly timed time of year for us to be talking about this. So it is a huge shift going from being an expert in doing the thing that you do, your craft, the thing that you do, to leading other humans. And there's like so many different dynamics to it. Like for me, when I think about it, it's the leading of humans and supporting their craft. And then there's a different type of dimension of managing up, right? And managing up and out. And it's you think when you're going through that process that, oh, I've done this before. I've been the team lead, I've been the this, I've been the that. But then you get into the role and it feels so foreign when you thought it would be so familiar.
Yeah, it's very jarring. It's actually a very jarring transition. And I noticed this throughout my long-standing career as a HR leader in various different companies. And watching leaders go through this transition was always fascinating. Because the reason why it's jarring is because you go from building your career as an individual contributor and you get really, really sort of dang good at what you do. And then when you step into leadership, you are no longer the expert. So don't forget all that you've learned, but however long it's taken you to get to that point, some people are in their careers 10, 15, or even 5, 10, 15, 20 years before they move into management. And you've been perfecting your craft and creating habits that work exactly for you, for your peak performance. Then you step into a leadership role and it's like, great, that works for you, but it's probably not going to work for anybody else. And now you have to relearn how to be one to many.
Mm.
2, learning and understanding how someone else might be different from you. 3, not actually touching the work itself. So you're now managing activity that you are accountable for through other people. And I'm not a parent, but I have been a child, and I can only imagine what it feels like when you are trying to navigate activity through another human being in that context, let alone when there's more pressure from external sources in a company. There's deadlines, there's money involved, that is ultimately your responsibility, accountability to manage.
Yeah, and I imagine I'm trying to put myself back into, the space that I was in, and like it can feel so incredibly lonely making that switch because, the people that were your peers, the people you had lunch with, the people that you did all those things with, that you confided in, you're their boss now, or you're at a different level than they are. You have a different role than they are. Like, so a lot of your network that supported you, I don't know if it necessarily breaks, but it shifts, right?
Mm. Mhm. Yeah, and it's going from being in the team to leading the team is, again, a huge transition, and part of that is because of the way in which people feel about it.
Tell me more.
Right. So if you think about if you've been working alongside somebody, maybe you know that their aspirations is to become a leader as well, and there's only one leadership seat and you get it. Now that person can be outwardly very happy for you, but it's also something that they wanted. So you're going to have a mixed bag of feelings and emotions there of, sure, they knew that this was your goal, they wanted it for you, but there's also, they're going to be holding a little bit of sadness for themselves because they wanted that too. And maybe that meant an increase in pay and what that would have done for their financial goals in buying a house, all of these other things that are just so external to just the move itself. So it's it's not just about getting the job and getting on with it. You've now got to relearn how to work with someone in a different capacity. And now, as a manager of maybe what was a friend, you're going to now need to understand their motivations and potentially try and support them in their growth, which comes with maybe some difficult conversations, maybe opportunities that don't manifest the way that they wanted it to go.
Yeah.
And so it's not just about getting the role. There's people's emotions that are involved as well, which impacts the way people work and show up to work. And
Yeah. And there aren't, most organizations don't provide new managers with the strongest support, the strongest resources around that transition. They're like, hey, here's your new contract, here's your new compensation model. They might have you sign it, they might not, depending on what's going on. I do not see the doorbell is ringing, but we're going to ignore that in the background. We're going to see if we can properly ignore it. It's not for me. Um, but, like, there are those big transitions that happen and you have no resources. Like, you might have like a handful of very, like, tactical guides, but none of the like, nothing to help you navigate your change, let alone the change for your team.
yeah, and it happens everywhere. People get really excited about the prospect of moving into management, and you're so distracted and excited by the fact that this is a great opportunity. Maybe it's a personal goal, maybe again, like the financial element is just going to help you out in any other way. But we don't often ask the question of what's the support around me and how long do I have that support for, as well as what's the expectation of me getting up to speed. And that phrase "getting up to speed" always makes me laugh because it's going to be different for for everyone. But also, like, just because you get the role, you're not capable in the role until you've been in it for a while, right? So you've got to relearn how the company works from a leadership perspective. You've got to relearn how you lead and not do. Whereas you've been training effectively your whole life to do and to execute, and you've been rewarded on that. So even just stepping back from how do I let go of doing the doing, that transition is like changing a habit of a literal lifetime in your career in some
Uh,
ways. So how long do I have to get myself in a position where I'm really comfortable, not 100% confident, but I'm comfortable, I'm secure, I'm performing in my role. And those expectations aren't usually set up front either. So when we move into management roles, there should be, and what would be wonderful if there was like a new onboarding process into the role. But because you've been in the company, it's like, oh no, you just go into it and you'll just learn. But it's like we wouldn't have an external person come in and just drop them in it, would we?
Wonderful framing. Like, if you are not watching this on video, I'm like, I've got like my jazz hands and I'm snaps and everything because it is so true. We would never do that to a stranger coming into the organization. But the person who's been there for more than a minute, somehow they'll intuitively through osmosis figure it out. Like, no, that's not realistic.
The whole premise of it is actually understanding how the company chooses to lead. Like, what leadership style does the company have? Because that's going to be what the company leans back on, right? These are our standards. These are our expectation for every manager in this company, that they do this, 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 and this. They behave in this way, this way, this way. This is what we reward on. This is what we do not reward on. And all of these things that we just expect this person, because they've been here for more than a minute, as you mentioned, that they should just know. But you've been training them as an individual contributor, not as a manager.
It's reminding me of all the universe of things that become clear to you when something like when you step into that role. Like, for example, a number of organizations I've been in have there's talking points. Whenever anything major happens in an organization that you need to cascade the messages out to your team. Gosh, I'm speaking in so much jargon right now, but it's true. You get your talking points, and there are the list of things that you will say, and there are the list of things that you won't say. And you're in this like inner conflict because, okay, I understand that this is this. Oh, that's why my leader has always communicated that way. That's why they never talked about the other thing that everyone is dying for them to talk about. And suddenly, like, it's sort of like opening up and seeing what's going on behind the curtain. And it's jarring. It's jarring.
Yeah, and you are now the gatekeeper of information, whereas before you were the one hungry for information and the requester of the information, whereas now you're the gatekeeper, because you are now in charge of change management, and you are now in charge of how people respond to that, and you are now in charge of implementation of process and project through people.
Yeah. And
And that's
it's
a huge
making me think, what was that? Sorry?
I was gonna say, and that's a huge transition because you've been so good at executing, which is
Very much
probably
so.
why you got promoted.
It's probably why you got promoted. And it's so what it's making me think of is like threading the needle between like the person who had was a leader in the team. They weren't a manager. So differentiation between leaders and managers. Leaders, anyone can be a leader. A manager has a title and a set of responsibilities. That's really more HR-ish kind of things, right? Um, but to me, like what made me a really good leader may not to the thing that you're speaking to a little bit earlier, may not align 100% with the leadership style of the company and the leadership requirements of the company, and finding the way to thread the needle and braid those two things together so you still are as authentic of yourself as you can be while still being, I'm using compliant is the best word that I can come to, compliant to the needs of the organization, because being a manager puts you in a very legal role, whether you recognize it or not.
Yeah, and I like what you said there around leaders are anybody. Um, you can be a leader in any situation. You are the only leader in any of the situations you are in, because you are the leader of your ship.
Yes.
You are the one that controls what comes out of your mouth. You are the one that controls, for the most part, the physical actions you take and the movements that you make. And anybody, everyone is a leader in their own right. And the way in which you lead yourself as an individual contributor might not be what the company desires from you as a manager. And
Yeah.
that can be a values friction point. That
Yeah.
can be a motivational friction point. That can be a misunderstanding of what is required from management. And the question is does that align with where you want to go? Does that align with what you want to do? And there's often no trial period for leadership. Sorry, management.
No.
It's like, "Oh, you're in now and that's it," which has always been curious to me, because there's often this offering of what we call like a team lead role, which is personally for me teaches bad habits
Oh, tell me more.
because team leader roles are often player coaches.
Mhm.
So they have some responsibilities of management, but they also have individual um, activity as well, which is essentially teaching them to not focus on either. And therefore, when they get into a management role, they are so used to both managing and doing, it becomes also hard to then let go of the doing.
They
So
have
you
both
can,
sides. They get to the benefit or
yeah.
the intrinsic and extrinsic rewards of both elements, and now they have to focus on.
Yeah. So you're not, it's a test of how much they can cram in
Yeah,
to their calendar, and it puts immense pressure on them, but it's actually not a clear experience of management because
yeah.
management doesn't necessarily include doing the doing. It's about facilitation of doing the doing through other people.
So resources. Let's talk about resources and how does one so let's assume that we are in the majority situation where the organization has limited support for people moving into people management role. If they have something, it might be some on-demand courses that you seek out through the learning repository and you found underneath a rock. You know, like let's go to that more typical scenario. And this is not shade. Most people are in this situation, or most organizations are in this situation. How does a how does a new leader start to self-serve themselves and acquire the skills, the fortitude, the resilience, all the things that are required of a people manager?
Yeah, and it's often the case where there is a lot of self, again, like leadership skills where you're self-educating. There are a number of programs out there and there's lots of training. I would focus more on identifying any potential weak spots that you have, because those are the ones that are going to test you the most. So, for example, if you can get really honest with yourself and say, I'm not particularly great with um, confrontation or conflict or what feels like conflict to me, so, what are the resources and tools and models that I can lean on in order to learn, not necessarily to love it, but to be able to approach it in a way that feels good for me? Mm. I would also recommend that they spend a lot of time in self-discovery, highlighting areas, as I mentioned, around areas of genuine improvement, but also what does it mean to them to be a leader? What are the values that they hold in a management role, so that they can be very discerning as they continue to grow. But ultimately, there's a bunch of like fundamental skills of doing the job, just purely doing the job, which is learning how to structure one on ones, learning um, uh, basic performance management um, actions, for example,
Sure.
documentation, how to structure feedback, whether it's constructive acknowledgement or exceeding expectations, learning how to write a performance review at the end of the year, like all of these things that are like the fundamental skills of just doing the job. How do
Yeah.
I communicate clearly and effectively? There's lots of models out there. Then you start to move into, right, who am I in this role? Because I'm not just a bunch of tasks that I have to do. I'm a human in this role. And actually, how do I feel about the way that I'm doing it?
Yeah.
Um, so I would say focus on the fundamental skills of doing the job.
Yeah.
To get that, then you can start to think about, okay, who am I in this role?
That makes sense to do the learning before you reshape your identity, like, for yourself, right? And it's reminding me of a bit of advice that I heard years ago from the CEO. Somebody in a leadership forum asked, "What are you reading these days?" Right? So, which a classic town hallish kind of question. And he said, honestly, like early in my career, I would read books about my craft. But the higher I got in my career, the more I started reading psychology books because you're working with humans. And a lot of what you're talking about, like there is a business element to it depending on your role, business cases for getting more money and all that stuff. But that usually comes a little bit higher than that first people management role. But yeah.
Yeah, and it's because you wanna get a handle on the execution because that's what is gonna be what the company is likely focusing on.
Yeah.
So you can learn frameworks and models and just get comfortable with the process of doing what it is that you need to do.
Yeah.
And I always use one-on-ones as a really easy example. Often managers go into one-on-ones and they're like, "So, how's it going? What you been up to? Let's talk about your weekend." Where it's like, it's not what one-on-one's for. Um, and until you get into a rhythm of like, okay, the one-on-one means that I need to know this, 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 and this about the work that you're doing. As I get more and more comfortable with it, I'm going to be able to invite other conversation in because we're in a flow.
Yeah.
In a flow, we understand each other, but there's there is work that needs to keep moving and keep keep the lights on as such. Then you start to say, okay, now I've got some evidence of completing that task. How would I change it? What else do I want from this? But you are learning the job and learning about yourself at the same time.
And learning about your team, because it's making
Yeah.
me think of the way early on I would model my one-on-ones the way they told me to, right? There was a particular way that the company that I was at wanted the one-on-ones handled. And the more people I led, the more I realized, like, okay, this is not going to work for this person. This is not going to work for that. Like, and everyone needed something different. Like in some scenarios, like my team literally just wanted my time to do work with me. I'm like, okay, fine. This is your one on
Mm,
one. We'll handle it however you want to. And it provided, I had enough laps under my belt, so to speak, where I could understand like how to get what I needed. Others, despite the organization saying we needed to have a one on one check in every single week, we didn't have that much to talk about. We would meet once a month. Both of us knew to check things off in the system, but that was what that person needed. It was based on their needs, not my calendar, right? And so, but the whole point that I'm getting at is it goes to your point of like it takes a lot of repetition and practice on your part and getting it wrong an awful lot before
mm.
you figure out how to get it right and get it right across all the different nuances that you're going to find yourself.
Yeah, it's like when you learn any new skill, like I'm a pretty active person, so if I'm learning a new sport, it's like tennis, just learn how to hit the thing. Hit it. And just hit it. That's the goal. We're just going to hit it. Like every time it comes your side, you got to hit it. You got to hit it back and we're going to go forehand, backhand, forehand, backhand. Then you start to say, "Oh, well if I twist the racket a little bit this way, I'm more center. Okay, so I'm going to now I'm going to practice that. And I'm going to try and do it." And you then in 6 months' time, after X amount of lessons, I'm like, actually, no, that doesn't work for me because my elbow's like this. So if I go up like that, I can't hit it that. You see what I mean? Like to
Too.
analyze it, but you have to have had the practice to start with.
Yeah, and I love that you provided that example because I think we give ourselves grace when we're learning something like tennis. But when we're talking about people management, like I've been living here forever. I should be able to do this like that, but it's not.
And it goes back to if it's an internal promotion, it's like, I've been at this company forever. Why am I now not very good at this? And I was top of my game and now I'm back at the bottom because yeah, it's a new sport.
And imposter syndrome sneaks in and all those other things show up and it's just it's a bear. It's a
Mm,
bear.
yeah. It's scary. It's frightening because it's you suddenly then have, wow, I'm really not good at this and I've been good at X for a really long time. And as adults, it's not a nice feeling.
No, it's really uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable. So top skills that people need to work on, whether they're thinking about getting into people management or have entered into it, what do you find are the most useful ones for people to have and to practice and to just continue honing the craft up? Because I think that a lot of these, it's not a leadership to me, and management is not a one and done. The world is constantly shifting around us. You're always relearning. So you're always in some version of learning mode. But what skills come to mind as like the ones that like are the most useful for people to practice or fine tune?
I would say I would answer that in two phases. I would answer that in like fundamental activity, and then the emotional side of it. So fundamental activity, um, I would say the biggest focus is about communication of information to the team and secondly, learning the job of the people on your team from a management perspective, not as a peer.
Ooh, those both hit really hard. Really hard.
Yeah. So communication is like expectation setting.
Sure.
What are your expectations of this role? Therefore, the activities that that person does, sorry, and getting very clear on how you communicate that. So, what's your communication style? How does information flow through? And how do you want it to flow through? And that could lead to setting up regular one-on-ones, setting up team meetings just to share information as much as you can. More information, the better. Less seldom do people complain that they've heard the same thing over again. They usually complain that they've only heard it once.
So true. And
So,
sometimes it's like what a study says, people need to hear something 3 times to hear it sometimes, like, on some stuff, yeah.
which means that managers have spoken about it at least 10 times. Right?
It's
And
new to
so,
them. It's not new to you. You feel like you're yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I used to always say when we went through change in my former role, it's like, "You bored of talking about it yet?" And they'd be like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Well, strap in. We've got another 3 months of saying the same thing over and over again."
It's true.
Um, and then, as I mentioned, like the second one is about learning the job that people do as a manager, not as a peer. So
Yeah,
understanding what their outputs are, um, what are they striving to? Because as a peer, you understand what each other do, but as a manager, you really need to understand like what the outcomes are. Is this work producing now what I am accountable for? So setting expectations, communication, understanding the roles of your team, and then feedback. Learning how to deliver feedback. Those would be my like three. Whilst all of the other madness is happening, those would be my top three to focus on. The rest will come. Um,
and on that 3rd one, receiving of feedback, one of the gripes I've heard from many people about their respective people managers, I this goes back at least a decade, is that their managers aren't always receptive to feedback. So I would if I can add that footnote to that last one, like the giving, it's also the hearing and the listening. Whether you internalize it, take that feedback, apply that feedback, that's a different story. But being able to listen to it, I think, yeah,
yeah, giving and getting feedback, and that could look like a feedback structure that you follow. So that it's the same for everyone. It's you're giving clear feedback, and then looking at it in reverse for yourself as well. To your point,
yeah,
the other side of that around like self development, emotional development, is to get familiar with how you deal with change because you're about to go through a lot of it. So what are your signs of stress when it comes to change? And that could be a behavior, that could be a feeling. What are your signs of overwhelm? Because that's going to relate to how you then deal with certain situations. And what are your boundaries when it comes to your work, right? What are your boundaries when it comes to the time you're willing to give? And what is the uh what is the time you're willing to give, and why are they in place? What's the impact of those boundaries being pushed? Often I've seen managers move into role, and it's just like they become yes people, and they are just saying yes to all of the things, and then it leads to burnout very, very, very quickly.
everyone's burnout. Their burnout, the team's burnout. Yes,
So recognizing that actually these are my boundaries, and these are my trigger signs when I'm starting to get burnt out, and this is how I react through change.
yeah,
Just so that you're aware of what's coming up because you're about to go through and experience all three.
yeah. And so a question, so I somewhere along the way, I recognized the fact that I had mentors within my organization. I had I'd worked my internal network within the organization as far as I could. Um, an unlock for me was when I actually engaged a career coach, right? And it was and because I was in the role that I was in, because I had that little bit of more money.
Mhm.
And despite my organization, some companies will pay for that, some companies will not.
Mhm.
My organization for that particular thing did not. But to me, it was so worthwhile finding that external partner who I could just dialogue with through all
Mhm.
those things.
Mhm. Yeah, and a lot of the clients that I work with, whether they are first-time leaders or the CEOs of the business, having that time to just be asked questions allows them to solve a lot of the thinking that they've been mulling over. Um, and I've been working with a VP, and one of their comments was like, I didn't even think that that was an issue, but actually, what an impact that thing is having on my current situation. But they wouldn't have gotten there because they would have just sat in the thinking rather than expressing and, you know, doing all the physical things like sighing, leaning back on the chair, like giving space to think about things. Because we often put it on the list, like, oh, I got to think about that and write it down. But to actually think about something, you have to come out of the tactical. You have to come out of maybe a strategic conversation that you've just had and just isolate on that one thing. And that's tricky. Like balancing and focusing is really tricky and making the space for it. So often coaching is a space for you to self-discover, get to the bottom of something,
Get
get
fresh
some
eyes on it.
fresh
Right.
eyes on something, getting an outward perspective. And my my coaching style is what I call like a coach learning approach, which is there are things that I have experienced and I know to be true, and I will only give that if I'm directly asked for it. And even then, I chuck it back and say, I think you know what you want to do, so I'm just going to keep pushing you until you say the thing that you don't want to say.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, and I think that that's I mean, where I'm very cognizant of time, but I also wanna just touch on um, finding a good coach. Heaven knows that there are so many coaches out there right now, and there are so many different coaching styles and coaching philosophies and coaching whatever it might be. I mean, in my experience, the best coaches offer we'll call it an introduction session for free or for a nominal fee to help you figure out is that the good fit because it's not all that different than finding a good therapist. You need to find the right match that suits your needs, that can support you in the way that you're best supported, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I completely agree. Most of the coaches that I am aware of in my community
Yeah.
actually offer, myself included,
Yeah.
I have a free 30-minute connection. Before we even work together, we've probably spent an hour and a half together.
Yeah.
Because it's really important for me as a coach that they feel like I'm the person that's going to be most supportive. Because if not, that won't feel good for me either. And I'm a huge fan of finding your fit. I'm also very open to referrals if I don't think I am the one with the skills to help. I've got a brilliant network of awesome coaches that I will often be like, there's something here because the goal for me is that you get what you need.
100%.
And that's why I went into the work that I did. So a lot of coaches offer, myself included, have like a connection call. And I think trusting the way in which you feel from an energy perspective as well, because coaching will go it will go one way and it will go deep.
Yeah.
Uh, and you want to make sure that you feel safe with that person. And safeness, vulnerability is often an energy thing. So
Yeah.
it doesn't feel right, similar to what you were saying around therapy or trusting someone with something important, does that feel good as well? And also, is their background doesn't always have to be related. Think about the questions that they ask you. Um, so you don't always have to have a coach with the same background.
Same
Some of my
cracks. Yeah.
Yeah, some of
Yeah.
my best coaching moments are from people who are nothing like me.
Yeah. Which is sometimes, yeah, that's sometimes where the magic comes from.
Mhm. Mhm.
Any other things that we didn't, we covered such good ground and we went deep. We went deep on a whole bunch of things. We gave people a little taste, we went deep. Anything else that comes to mind that you want to make sure that you share with everyone?
I would just say that new managers, you will have these, "Oh my goodness" moments. Oh my goodness, it happens more often than it doesn't. And it's completely common, it's completely regular to feel that way. You will not be the only one who has ever felt the way in which you do. Seek help, even if it feels very anti what you would usually do. To me, that's a sign that is important for you to get it. Managing others is difficult because we're not in an era of shut up and do. We are an era of self-elevation. People are becoming more aware of self-worth, how they do and don't want to be treated. So management is becoming, we're moving into a new age of leadership, which is why I wanted to be part of this journey, because there's an awakening of a different type of leadership, and it's very much managers having an awareness of how people work and supporting them to get the best out of them rather than just shut up and do.
Such a beautiful place to end. I am so grateful for you for joining me, Laura. You are a font of knowledge. Um, how can people find you? And I'll make sure I add it to the show notes too, so people can find the links. Yeah.
Yeah, so I hang around on LinkedIn a lot. Laura Lillie Goodridge on LinkedIn. I do have a Instagram, which is the _manager_coach. And my website is lauralillycoaching.com. I have a bunch of resources on my website too, free access to various tools around one-on-ones, coaching through performance reviews, getting your prioritization stuff in order, all the way through to like managing chaos. So help yourself to any of those. If you like them, feel free to reach out. I do offer these intro calls, even if it's just for a chat. I'm more than happy to help. I love what I get to do. And if I can help people understand themselves a little bit more, understand their situation a little bit more, and get more confident in managing said situation, then that's what I'm here for.
Again, so grateful. I know that people have gotten so much out of this episode, and I am so grateful to you for the conversation. I'll make sure I add all those links. And thank you again. And I hope
Thank
that everyone who's
you.
listening joins us next time for another topic from the messy middle. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
If you've got some Get Stuff Doners on your team or are one who takes pride in your work, we just dropped a brand new I Get Stuff Done collection in the Messy Middle merch shop. You'll also find the classics Don't Make Me Regret Trying to Be Helpful and Words Matter. They make fantastic year end gifts, and yes, we even have gift cards. And if something's running late, there's a free I ordered it, but it's not here yet download you can hand them in the meantime. Check everything out at messymiddlemerch.com. And if you like this episode, a like, share, or subscribe goes a really long way in helping us spread the word. Till next time.